So I see a lot of golfers working on avoidance drills by putting things on the floor to try to fix their path. So for example, if you're somebody who is cutting across the golf ball, you put a range basket or an alignment stick or something right outside the ball to try to help you to swing more from the inside. Now in theory, this might be helping certain golfers in the short term, but you might actually be creating more bad habits long term. There are some golfers who will benefit from this forever. There are others who won't. So you have to be careful. And I'll tell you why. It's because using obstruction tools to fix your path and things like that is not guaranteeing that you're actually correcting the root of your problem. So I'll give you an example. If you are somebody who cuts across the golf ball because you have some really bad arm structure, let's say you don't have a lot of hand depth at the top of your backswing, meaning your hands are very upright, not very far back, or you're somebody whose hands kick out a lot and then the wrist angles are really poor, creating an over-the-top plane, or your trail elbow is disconnecting and you're internally rotating the trail shoulder, which also steepens the shaft, right? In theory, you can actually retain all of those bad elements in transition, but if I slide and tilt my body enough, right, I can theoretically fix my path into the ball. So you might be somebody who creates those bad habits without realizing it, and you're cutting across the golf ball, and then you put some sort of external cue in the way to fix your path. Well, you might still be doing the same bad things, but now if I actually compromise my pivot enough, hanging back with my chest, for example, sliding and separating my upper and lower body, and really getting the club to drop to the inside via my chest tilting away from the target, I can theoretically fix my path into the ball. Or I'll see golfers create the same bad habits and then they early extend to fix it, meaning the pelvis kicks forward, the spine extends, and that drops the club to the inside. Again, their transitional habits with their arm structure is still really poor, but in theory, they're fixing their path into the ball. I'm not a big fan of that because now what you're doing is, yeah, in the short term, you might theoretically be helping your path into the ball. So occasionally you'll hit some nice draws, which could be very motivating in the short term. But in the long term, if you're creating poor arm structure and you're creating some extreme habits with your pivot, you're not realizing it, but you're actually creating two bad habits that are just getting matched together enough to help you with the path, but long term are creating a lot of timing habits, a lot of strike consistency habits that are not going to be easy to overcome, right? And so that's a situation where rather than doing that, I would rather we actually focus on the root cause of the issue. Well, if your arm structure is really poor, you have no hand depth, your trail elbow separates from the body, well, if you get the hands a little deeper, you get the arm structure a little bit more connected, all of a sudden you might actually get the path sorted out by itself without you just focusing on some sort of external cue. I know that's a much more technical approach to solving your problem, but in the long run, your golf game is going to thank you. In the short term, it might be a little bit harder to achieve. For some of you, not for all. Oftentimes, I see golfers come into my studio and we actually fix them pretty quickly with the arm structure without needing to help it. So the idea I'm trying to say is it's not that external drills like this don't help. Of course, there are some scenarios in which it'll help the golfer long-term immediately. Like if the only reason they're over the top of the ball is because their chest really spins out, and now having the basket there keeps their chest closed a little longer to drop the hands and club in. In that scenario, it's the perfect storm where you'll actually help yourself long-term. But if you're somebody who's creating poor club movements because of the arm structure, if all I'm trying to do is avoid this range basket on the floor, for example, or some sort of external obstruction, I might just be now also compromising my pivot and achieving my short-term goals, but penalizing myself in the long run.